Have you ever felt sure you could tell when someone was toxic? Maybe you think you'd always notice the red flags, the heavy energy, the subtle manipulations, the lines they cross. Most people believe they can recognize danger the moment it appears. We assume we'll see it coming. But what if I told you that the most dangerous people are often the ones who seem the kindest? The ones who look supportive, helpful, even like family. Carl Jung dedicated his life to studying these hidden forces. He discovered that the real threat doesn't come from obvious malice, it comes from unconscious darkness, quietly shaping our relationships and draining our energy. In this video, you'll learn how to recognize the 6 toxic archetypes that can slip into your life without you even realizing it. By the end, you'll know how to protect your mind, your emotions, and your sense of self. So if you're ready, stay with me until the end, and let's start seeing the truth together. 1. The Unconscious Manipulator. Imagine this for a moment. You meet someone who seems gentle, maybe a little wounded. They share their struggles so openly you feel honored to be trusted. You tell yourself you're a good person for being so understanding. You feel needed, important. But over time, something shifts. You start to notice that every conversation ends with you feeling like you've done something wrong. No matter what happens, you're somehow responsible for their feelings. When they get angry, it's because you triggered them. When they feel worthless, it's because you didn't reassure them enough. If any of this sounds familiar, you may be dealing with what Carl Jung called the unconscious manipulator. This isn't the obvious villain you'd expect. They don't scream or threaten. In fact, they often seem kind, sensitive, even wise. That's why it's so confusing. Jung wrote, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will encounter as fate." Sometimes that fate comes in the form of someone whose hidden pain seeps into your life. Instead of facing their own wounds, they turn you into the canvas for their unresolved conflict. Let's pause here, take a deep breath, because this is important. Chronic projection doesn't look dramatic. It feels like a slow erosion of your confidence. You start to second-guess your memory. You question whether you're selfish or unkind. I read a story from a woman on Reddit who said, "I thought I was helping him heal, but by the end, I couldn't recognize myself." That's the danger. The more you try to help, the more you lose touch with who you are. Here's a micro recap so you can reflect. An unconscious manipulator blames you for feelings you didn't create, turns you into a character in their emotional story, makes you question your own reality, uses your empathy as an open door. Stay with me, because soon we'll look at how to protect yourself without feeling guilty. But first, ask yourself, have you ever felt like you're always apologizing, always shrinking yourself to keep the peace? Jung described projection as a form of psychic blindness. You stop seeing yourself as you truly are. You start believing the distorted reflection someone else has created. And the scariest part is that they're not always cruel. Sometimes they're the people you care about the most. They seem fragile. They act like you're the only one who understands them. That's what makes the trap so strong. You think, if I just love them enough, they'll finally heal. But every time you sacrifice a little more of your peace to save them, you slip deeper into their shadow. The truth is, you can't fix someone who refuses to look inward. You can't keep carrying a pain that was never yours to begin with. So, how do you reclaim your sense of self? Let me give you 3 clear steps you can try today. Step 1. The reality check. When you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask yourself, is this feeling really mine? Just naming it can help you see the difference. Step 2. The pattern journal. For 1 week, write down every time you feel blamed or guilty around this person. Look for patterns. Awareness is your first line of defense. Step 3. The boundary phrase. Practice saying, "I care about you, but I am not responsible for your emotions." It will feel uncomfortable at first, but it's a powerful way to protect your energy. Let's pause one more time. If you recognize yourself here, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you have a sensitive heart, and someone has learned to lean on it too much. Bear with me, because in the next section, we'll explore an even subtler dynamic. The bearer of the persona, the person who hides behind a perfect mask. You'll learn how to see through appearances and trust your instincts again. 2. Have you ever spent time with someone who seems almost perfect? The friend who is always polite, always says the right thing, never seems upset, never shows a crack in their bright, polished image. At first, it feels comforting. You think, wow, they really have it together. But if you look closer, you start to notice something unsettling. The smiles feel rehearsed. The conversations seem scripted. Every moment feels like a performance, and you can sense that behind the mask is something hollow. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we all wear to survive in the world. It's not inherently bad. We need a persona to play our roles, student, parent, professional, but the danger comes when someone believes they are the mask, when they lose any connection to their authentic self underneath. Let's pause for a micro recap. The bearer of the persona doesn't just hide their truth. They start to demand that you hide yours too. I remember a story someone shared online. She said, "My partner was admired by everyone. He was so polite, so agreeable, but when I shared my feelings, he would shut down completely. It felt like I was talking to a wall with a pleasant smile painted on it." This is why living with a bearer of the persona can be so draining. You start to feel like something is missing, but you can't quite name it. You sense the lack of depth, the absence of real connection, and eventually you begin to edit yourself, lowering your voice, softening your emotions, performing your own version of perfect. That's how the mask becomes contagious. Jung warned that identifying too much with the persona is one of the greatest obstacles to true growth. When you believe you are the role you play, everything spontaneous and alive gets locked away in the basement of your psyche. Over time, that hidden part starts to wither. Let's pause again. Ask yourself, have you ever felt like you can't be real around someone? Like you have to measure every word so you don't disrupt their perfect image? This is how the persona traps not just the person wearing it, but everyone around them. And the cost is high. You lose authenticity. You lose joy. You lose the simple freedom to be messy and human. Stay with me, because soon we'll talk about how to protect yourself without becoming hard or cynical. But first, here are 3 clear steps you can start practicing today. Step 1. The reality check. When you feel the urge to censor yourself around someone, pause and ask, am I doing this because it's true to me, or because I'm trying to fit their script? Step 2. The gentle disruption. Once a day, let yourself say something honest and a little imperfect. It could be admitting you're tired, sharing a doubt, or expressing an unpopular opinion. Watch how the mask reacts. Step 3. The self-anchor. Write down 3 things you value more than approval. Keep this note where you can see it. It will remind you that you don't need to be perfect to be worthy. Let's do another micro recap. The bearer of the persona lives in fear of rejection. Their mask keeps them safe, but also keeps them alone. When you interact with them, remember this isn't about you. It's about their fear of being seen. Stay with me, because in the next section, we'll look at something even more hidden. The person who seems calm on the surface, but is secretly ruled by the repressed shadow. You won't want to miss it, because learning to spot this can save you years of confusion and self-blame. And if any part of this resonates, know this: you are not alone. The need to seem perfect is everywhere, but you don't have to play that game. You can choose truth over performance, even if it feels scary. Take a breath. You're already doing the brave work of seeing what's real, and that's how change begins. If this video is helping you see things differently, please share it with someone you care about. It could be a small gift that makes their day a little lighter. 3. The owner of the repressed shadow. Imagine someone you know who always seems calm and collected. They never raise their voice, never admit to strong feelings. To everyone else, they look balanced and respectable. You might even admire them. But if you spend enough time with them, you'll notice something hidden under the surface. It starts as a tightness in the air when you share your emotions, a subtle tension when you say something vulnerable. They might smile politely, but you feel their judgment, even if they never say it outright. This is what Carl Jung described as the repressed shadow. He wrote in Ion that the shadow is everything that the individual refuses to recognize in themselves, and yet insists on projecting in some way. When someone represses their anger, envy, shame, or desire for too long, those feelings don't disappear. They collect in the unconscious. They ferment like old wine, growing more potent over time. Let's pause here for a micro recap. The repressed shadow is not something external. It's the part of ourselves we pretend doesn't exist, the hidden emotions we label as bad or unacceptable. I once read a story on Reddit from a woman who said, "My father never yelled, never cursed, but he would go weeks without speaking to me if I disappointed him. That silent punishment was worse than any argument." That's the truth of the repressed shadow. It doesn't explode often, but when it does, the damage is deep. You can often recognize this pattern by a few telltale signs. These people cannot tolerate spontaneity. They see vulnerability as weakness. They react to authentic emotion with cold distance or cutting criticism. Here's the paradox. On the surface, they seem disciplined and helpful. They work hard. They appear generous. But behind the perfect mask is a constant war with their own humanity. Jung warned that the stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow, and the more brutal its eventual release. Let's pause again. Think about someone you've known who holds grudges for years over small things, who explodes out of nowhere, who seems to resent everyone's joy. This is not random. It's the shadow leaking out. Stay with me, because soon I'll share how you can protect yourself and not lose your own spirit in their storm. But first, remember, the shadow isn't just made of darkness. Jung also said it holds our denied gifts, creativity we were told to hide, confidence we thought was arrogance, passion we were taught to suppress. When these potentials are ignored, they become poison, and this poison seeps into relationships, infecting everything it touches. Here's another micro recap. Living with the owner of the repressed shadow feels like standing on an emotional minefield. You never know which step will set off an explosion. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. So many people carry invisible wounds, but you don't have to let their unprocessed pain define your reality. Here are 3 clear steps you can start today. Step 1. The emotional mirror. When you feel judged or shamed by them, pause and ask, is this really about me, or is it something they can't face in themselves? This question can stop you from absorbing their projections. Step 2. The calm boundary. Practice saying, I hear you, but this feels bigger than what's happening right now. I'm not comfortable taking this on. It may feel awkward, but it's powerful. Step 3. The self-anchor. Write down 3 qualities you love about your authentic self, even if they make others uncomfortable. Read this list when you start to doubt yourself. Let's pause one last time. If you see yourself here, remember, protecting your energy doesn't mean you don't care. It means you refuse to be pulled into someone else's hidden battles. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore the moral controller, the person who uses guilt and righteousness as weapons. Recognizing this pattern can save you years of confusion and self-blame. Take a breath. You're doing the work of seeing what's real. That's where true freedom begins. 4. The moral controller. Think about the last time someone made you feel ashamed for simply being yourself. Maybe it was a parent who said they were only trying to guide you, or a friend who always seemed disappointed by your choices. At first, you might have believed their criticism was about your growth, about becoming a better person. But over time, you started to notice a pattern. No matter what you did, no matter how hard you tried, it was never enough. You always felt like you were falling short. That is the hidden power of the moral controller. Carl Jung warned us that when morality is used as a facade, it becomes one of the most toxic forces in human relationships. He called it a mask that hides the shadow, or the unacknowledged desires, fears, and contradictions a person refuses to face. Let's pause here for a micro recap. The moral controller doesn't look like a villain. They often seem wise, principled, caring, but under the surface is a desperate need to maintain the illusion of superiority. I read a story from someone on Reddit who shared, "My mother always said she was teaching me right from wrong, but every lesson felt like a verdict. I grew up believing I was inherently flawed. That's what happens when guilt is used as a weapon." The moral controller thrives on your doubt. They make you feel watched, measured, judged. Even when you are just trying to live, they find something to correct. Stay with me, because soon I will show you how to protect your inner freedom without becoming defensive or bitter. One reason this pattern is so insidious is that it often sounds like love. They say things like, "It's for your own good," "You'll thank me later," or "Someone has to tell you the truth." But that truth is not objective. It's tangled up with their own repressed shame and unmet needs. According to Jung, the more someone represses their shadow, the more they need to project it onto others to keep feeling pure. That's why moral controllers often see sin and failure everywhere except in themselves. Think about this. If you grew up around someone like this, you may have learned to hide your true feelings to keep the peace. You might still catch yourself second-guessing your decisions, replaying conversations, worrying that you are disappointing them. This is not because you are weak. It's because you have been conditioned to link obedience with worth. Let's pause again. If any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, breathe. You are not alone, and you are not beyond repair. Here are 3 clear steps you can start today to reclaim your sense of self. And step 1, the inner question. When someone criticizes you, ask yourself, is this about me or about their need to feel superior? Just this pause can help you see the projection. Step 2. The boundary statement. Practice saying, "I appreciate your concern, but I will make my own choices." You don't have to explain or justify. This is your right. Step 3. The reclaiming ritual. Write down a list of values that feel true for you, not imposed by someone else. Keep it somewhere visible, so when guilt creeps in, you remember your own compass. Living close to a moral controller feels like walking in a house full of hidden cameras. You never know when you will be called out. You start to filter your words, your dreams, even your personality. But you have another option. You can choose to step out of their story and back into your own. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will explore the complex individual, the person whose emotions swing from warmth to rage without warning. Recognizing this pattern will help you stop feeling responsible for storms you did not create. Take a moment and breathe. You are learning to see through masks and stand in your own truth. That is a rare and powerful thing. 5. The complex individual. Imagine living with someone whose emotions feel like a storm you can never predict. One day they are warm and affectionate. They tell you that you make their life better. The next day, without warning, they shut down or explode in anger over something you can't even remember doing. You start to wonder if you are the problem, if maybe you really are as careless as they suggest. This is the experience of being close to a complex individual. Carl Jung described complexes as little hidden personalities inside us, clusters of old memories and emotions that never got resolved. When triggered, they take over completely. The person you care about isn't responding to the present moment. They are reacting to a wound from years ago. Let's pause here for a micro recap. A complex is like an invisible script. You may be acting out a part you never agreed to play. I read a story on Reddit from a woman who said, "My partner could be so loving that I believed he was my soulmate. But every few weeks he'd have a meltdown over something tiny. He'd accuse me of abandoning him or disrespecting him. I started to believe I was the cause." This is exactly how complexes operate. They don't show up every day. That's what makes them so hard to recognize. Stay with me, because in a moment, I'll share the 3 steps that can help you stop feeling like you have to shrink yourself to keep someone else calm. When you live with a complex person, you start to measure everything you say. You avoid certain topics. You try to anticipate their moods. You may even convince yourself that if you just love them better, the explosions will stop. But no amount of care can heal a wound someone refuses to see. Jung wrote that unrecognized complexes eventually colonize the psyche. They think for you. They speak for you. They feel for you. For someone dominated by a complex, every disappointment feels like an old betrayal. Every disagreement feels like rejection. Every boundary feels like abandonment. Imagine telling your partner you need an evening alone to rest. Instead of understanding, they accuse you of not caring. That reaction isn't about you. It's about all the times they felt wanted in the past. But if you're not careful, you'll start to believe the story. Let's pause again. Take a slow breath. Just because someone is wounded doesn't mean you have to carry the burden of their healing. Here are 3 clear steps you can start using today. Step 1. The inner label. When you feel that sudden emotional shift, silently name it. This is a complex. Naming helps you separate your reality from theirs. Step 2. The pattern tracker. Keep a journal for 2 weeks. Write down every episode, what triggered it, and how it made you feel. You'll start to see the repeating cycles. Awareness is your first shield. Step 3. The calm boundary. Practice saying, I hear that you're upset, but I can't take responsibility for feelings that don't belong to me. It might feel uncomfortable, but it will protect your energy. Let's do another micro recap. A complex individual isn't always explosive. Sometimes they are tender, loving, and sincere. That contrast is why you stay. You remember the good moments and hope they will last. But the truth is, unless the wounds are healed, the cycles will continue. Stay with me, because next we will talk about the psychic vampire, the person who doesn't explode but drains you drop by drop. Recognizing this will save you years of exhaustion. Before we move on, remember this: you didn't cause their pain, and you can't fix it alone. You deserve relationships where love doesn't feel like walking on a minefield. Take one more breath. You are learning to see clearly, and that is an incredible act of courage. 6. The psychic vampire. Have you ever noticed how being around certain people feels like standing in a room that's slowly losing all its air? Nothing dramatic happens, no shouting, no obvious attacks, just a quiet, constant draining that leaves you tired in ways you can't explain. This is the energy of the psychic vampire. Carl Jung didn't call them by this name, but he warned us about unresolved symbiotic bonds, relationships where one person never learns to carry their own emotional weight. Instead, they lean on you for every need, every crisis, every moment of comfort. Let's pause for a micro recap. The psychic vampire doesn't try to overpower you with aggression. They deplete you with constant demands for your time, your reassurance, your presence. I read a story from someone who said, "My roommate always needed me to be her emotional crutch. If I spent time alone, she'd guilt-trip me about being a bad friend. Eventually, I realized I was more tired after talking to her than after working a 12-hour shift. Stay with me, because in a moment, I'll show you how to set boundaries without feeling like the villain." At first, these relationships feel meaningful. The person tells you that you're the only one who understands them. You feel needed, maybe even proud of how much you can give. But over time, the giving never ends. The more you offer, the more they expect. Jung wrote that when two people stop seeing themselves as separate individuals, the self begins to dissolve. You lose track of what you feel and what belongs to them. You wake up exhausted, wondering why you feel so hollow. Let's pause again. If you felt this, like your soul is slowly leaking out, drop by drop, you are not alone, and you are not broken. Here are 3 clear steps you can try today to protect your energy. Step 1. The awareness question. When you feel guilty for wanting space, ask yourself, is this guilt coming from my own values or from their dependence on me? Just pausing to ask shifts the power back to you. Step 2. The time limit. Give their venting a container. For example, I have 15 minutes to talk, then I need to focus on other things. Clear limits stop the slow bleed of your attention. Step 3. The self-return ritual. Every day, reconnect with yourself through something that has nothing to do with them. Journal your thoughts. Walk outside without your phone. This is how you remember who you are apart from their needs. Let's do a micro recap. The psychic vampire doesn't always look demanding. They may seem kind or fragile, but over time, you end up living in a state of quiet panic, afraid to say no, afraid to take up space, afraid to disappoint. And if any part of this feels familiar, remember, you have the right to rest, you have the right to boundaries, you have the right to your own life. Take one more breath. You're already doing the hardest part, seeing what's real. That's where freedom begins. We've covered a lot together. You've learned how hidden patterns, from the bearer of the persona to the psychic vampire, can quietly shape your life. You've seen how unprocessed pain doesn't just disappear. It finds a way to act through us and those around us. But if you're still here, it means you have the courage to look honestly at these dynamics. That alone sets you apart, because awareness isn't about blaming or judging. It's about reclaiming the power to choose a different path. Remember, none of us is immune to these patterns. At times, we've all carried our own shadows. We've all hurt or been hurt. What matters is that you're willing to see, to name, and to heal. That is how you step out of the role of a hostage and become the author of your own story. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment sharing which of these profiles you've encountered, or which ones you recognize in yourself. Your honesty could inspire someone else to start their own journey of self-understanding. And before you go, don't miss the next video. It will take you even deeper into this process of shining light on the unconscious, so it stops controlling you from the shadows